So now we have Chris Brown, the Regional Weed Management Officer for the Weed Management branch of another acronym which changes all the time. Acronyms are a very fast changing thing in the NT government, so I won't try and pronounce that acronym. But Chris does very important work for the Olympic Botanic Garden and other landholders around. Chris and his team. He's been a Centralian for 20 years, working in the role of Regional Weed Manager for the last 15 years here in Alice Springs. He was originally employed by CLMA in the position working with landholders on ferals, weeds and soil erosion. And he studied natural resource management in the 90s and lived in Thailand for a couple of years, lucky you, which also provides a good background in tropical weeds as well. So Chris is talking about weed management in Central Australian rangelands. Please make Chris welcome.
Thanks, guys. Is it okay if I sit down? I'm a little bit tired. I'm going to talk about weeds. Everyone knows about weeds. They're in your back garden. They affect the economy. They affect the environment, the community. They're a pretty big deal. We've got close proximity to Asia with Darwin and things like that. There's a lot of threats just on our doorstep in Indonesia and places like that. So we've got to have weed risk in place for a lot of those threats that aren't here yet. We've also got a lot of problems here already, which we've got to deal with. So there's different strategies to deal with different things. Things on our doorstep, if it's an exotic that's coming in, we've got rapid response plans to deal with those. And I guess the key thing is to get onto them early and eradicate them before they actually do get a foothold. And then for existing problems, we've got various strategies in place, containment, mitigation, those sorts of things to deal with those. So we often joke there's only one species of fire, but there's multiple species of weeds, and each weed's got a different sort of strategy to deal with it. They're not simple and straightforward. It's actually quite complex to get your head around. We're sort of lucky in the territory. We've got big land holdings, so like, except for the Darwin rural area, it's very big areas you're dealing with. You don't have the complexity that you do in, say, Victoria, New South Wales, multiple smaller blocks and things like that to deal with. But at the same time, we've got a lot of other issues. We've got remoteness, isolation. We can't physically get to all the areas that we've got to. There's two of us in Alice Springs. We've got a 600,000 kilometre area. So, I mean, it's a massive job for two people to sort of try and cover that whole area. So we do as much as we can, but we do rely on other people. That's why we're fully into education and awareness and those sorts of things. I'll just move on. It's probably timely now. The national government's ramped up the National Biosecurity Strategy, so we're a signatory to that along with all other jurisdictions. So it provides opportunity for learnings, cost sharing, those sorts of things. If we do get a nationally significant species that turns up, then there's a network that we can sort of work with to try and deal with those issues. Those threats are real too. I mean, we've seen banana freckle, green mosaic virus. We've also had cyan weed, Parthenium weed in the last few years. So the things are happening, sort of thing. They're not potential. They're actually there and working with us. So I guess the key thing is to highlight the pathways of spread and try and have mitigation strategies in place to prevent entry of weeds. There's a multitude of pathways that we've got to deal with. And the key thing is also elimination, surveillance, picking up on these things early before they get a chance to establish. Once weeds become established, they're a nightmare. They're an ongoing thing. I mean, lots of studies have proven you only need a few hectares of particular weeds and you're with them for life, sort of thing. Once they get a sort of seed bank established, extremely difficult to deal with. And we've got a few examples of that already, like Athelpine down here. It's been nearly 30-year program that we've been dealing with it. Mimosa in the top end, all these other species. So, they can be quite expensive. They affect your bottom line. It affects everyone. Those costs get passed on to consumers as well. Okay, what does invasive biosecurity look like? Multiple pathways of entry and spread for weeds into the territory. And we know with like the big push for developing the north now, you've got NPUs, non-pastoral use agreements, where you've got diversification, We're seeing big horticultural developments, cotton in Katherine, all these other things, which is only going to increase the threat of weeds coming into the territory. So it's working out the key pathways, coming up with strategies to deal with the threats and working with those stakeholders, whether it be DIPL, industry, mining. You've only got to look at a map of the territory and 90% of it's under a mining exploration licence. So a lot of our work involves working closely with those different groups and coming up with strategies to deal with the potential threats of weeds getting into the NT. You've probably seen this before. It's a biosecurity continuum. We all know that prevention is better than cure, and it's the most cost-effective way of dealing is preventing things getting in here in the first place. You're going to save a lot of money and heartache in the long term. The other best principle is when things get in here, you get onto them early and you eliminate them before they do get a foothold and spread. Once weeds are established, obviously it becomes a containment strategy, Parkinsonia, things like that, rubber bush, or potentially an asset protection program where people talk about buffalo and things, threats like that to the environment. So that's how we deal with that, is through asset-based protection. Okay. Whoops, back. Some of you from Darwin would have heard about in the last 18 months, they had a outbreak, well, not an outbreak, Bunnings was found to be selling Sagittaria, which is a weed of national significance. So even with the big players, you've still got to be vigilant because things do get through the cracks. And so in response to that, there was a pretty massive media extension campaign by Weed Management Branch, trying to track all those plants that have been sold and getting onto the wholesalers and working out how it actually got into the network in the first place. It was in the news. So it was a pretty big deal, but subsequent to that, they actually did inspections in the rural area and found Sagittaria growing in people's ponds and things like that. So there's issues. You've got a lot of backyard sort of market growers and things like that. There's language barriers and all that sort of stuff. So it's a hard one to sort of deal with. A lot of online selling and things like that, which is even harder to regulate, but we're trying our best. We actually had a few recent examples, even in Alice Springs just the other week. They were selling lantana in one of the major nurseries, which is also a weed of national significance. So, and this is with, they've got a compliance and nursery manager in place, so they actually should be aware of all these things, but things still slip through the cracks. And just the other 2 weeks ago, I think, Rapid Creek Markets, there was a Asian vegetable, Limnicaris flava it's called. It's commonly used in Thai cooking and things like that. So once again, there's that language barrier we've got to contend with and deal with. More recently, again, AACO in the top end notified weeds branch of an occurrence of Siam weed, which is probably one of the world's worst weeds. A lot of properties in Southeast Asia and Africa, they actually have to abandon crops and whatever else because it's just such a horrible thing to contend with. Allergic reactions to livestock and people, those sorts of things. So we're linked into the National Biosecurity Strategy. There were incident management teams meetings which are ongoing. They also had an occurrence of it in Queensland in Tully, so we had lots of learnings there on how to map things and how to deal with it. But initially it was looking like being an eradication target, but since then more surveys have found it on two adjacent Aboriginal land trusts. So it's actually gone from an eradication to a containment strategy. But having said that, AACO have been really good in quarantining large areas and fencing areas off. We're currently sort of tapping into Queensland for some biocontrol agents. We're also doing aerial spraying and ground control as well. And the prediction was that it's probably been there for 20 years. I mean, that's the problem. A lot of these things can sit there in isolation. We just don't pick up on them in time, which is one of our biggest issues, is just it's such a huge area to cover. The isolation, you can't get into a lot of these places during the wet season and everything else, so it makes life a bit difficult. Okay, how are we involved in all of this? We do a lot of extension and training, trying to provide training and hygiene and things like that, which is the biggest threat, bringing weeds in. So working with DEPWS, mining companies, power and water, all those sorts of mobs, and just making sure they've got strategies in place to sort of prevent spread. We also do a lot of coordination with other groups, ranger programs and that sort of thing. Lots of mapping, aerial mapping. So we do a lot of broad area mapping and come up with strategies on how to map weeds and deal with weeds, and lots of different land tenures as well. You've got to contend with like VCL, defence, mining, pastoral, Indigenous, all those different groups. So it's all sort of strategic. Compliance and enforcement, we do a bit of that. Most of that's sort of highlighting to landholders and everything else their responsibilities under the Act. We've also got about 10 statutory weed management plans with more specific landholder obligations, which are pretty detailed. So a lot of our extension is making them aware of what they need to do so they're not in breach of the Act. On ground weed management, we still go out and collaborate with landholders, so we still actively control weeds. Down here anyway, we do. We also, we sort of comment on a lot of developmental proposals, your land clearing, your mining exploration, so we actually get to comment on those and provide data on where the likely weed issues are going to be and whatever else. We still do a bit of research. We've got trials ongoing on different species, rubber bush. We've got some herbicide trials with those. We've also got some fungal dieback trials on rubber bush and Parkinsonia, so there's a lot of that going on. Data's a big thing. It underpins a lot of what we do, so we spend a lot of time collecting data. And I guess policy, we've got, in the past, there was a lot of sort of ad hoc weed control. Now we've got scientific-based weed risk assessments, which is a lot more rigorous. There's a panel of experts that sort of work out the feasibility of control, the risks involved with their different species, and we also have a lot of community consultation so that we get everything lined up with the community as well. We've got different priorities, so obviously each region's got a regional weed strategy, and we've got alerts, things like Parthenium rubber vine. They're not well established here. They do come over occasionally. We've had Parthenium in Tennant Creek before. There's currently an agreement with the Queensland government to keep it a buffer zone on the Gulf there, so that there's a bit of surveillance to sort of keep it at bay. Queensland's got all those weeds that we don't want. They've got some pretty big nasty problems that we're trying to keep out. Rubber vine's the same. We've had a few occurrences of that. For us down here, we've got cactuses, we've got prickly pears, rope cactuses, and there's probably 7 sort of actively managed infestations of those on the pastoral lease, which are all sort of feasible to eradicate. And at the same time, we've been doing a compliance program with the urban area in Alice Springs, working with homeowners to sort of get rid of their illegal plantings in gardens, because that declaration all changed a few years back, so there's still a bit of confusion as to what's declared and what's not. And I guess down the bottom, we do get these occasional fly-in sort of things that they're not declared, but based on discussions with people like Angus and others, there is a chance that they could cause issues. So once again, it gets back to that prevention and elimination. So we actually try and eliminate these things before they get a bigger foothold. Why do we bother? Why do we care? Well, you've only got to look across the border in Queensland. Prickly acacia, 20 million hectares of it. It's just massive problems. And WA, mesquite, hundreds of thousands of hectares. South Australia, Western Australia, huge cactus infestations. Once again, hundreds of thousands of hectares. So, yeah, we've got to remain vigilant. We've got to keep on top of the weeds that we do have, because there is the chance with these big climatic changes, you get those episodic events, there's still enough of them there that you could actually end up with a massive problem. So, yeah, it's remaining vigilant and all that sort of stuff. So, once again, prevention is the big thing with us, and we spend a lot of time working with all the different utility mobs, your gas, power, water, rail, roads, I think there's something like 40,000 kilometres of roads alone. Vehicles, machinery, they're all a big threat for spreading weeds, so hygiene is a really key component of that. So we've got a big emphasis on weed spread prevention. Some of the pathways and the risks you can see there, a lot of it's unintentional, it's accidental, it comes in on machines, it comes on vehicles, hay, fodder, cattle movement, either between properties or interstate. So it's sort of trying to come up with strategies to mitigate those threats, which is what we do. And by far and away, humans are the biggest means of weeds spreading and entering the NT. I mean, once they're here, natural processes take over and spread them, but it's human intervention. Pastoral industry, I guess once I've already mentioned it, you've got hay, fodder, cattle movement, big threats to moving weeds and stuff like that. I guess a lot of the issues we have is landholders tend to you'll have a small patch of weed and you'll be a bit complacent, you won't want to deal with it, but then, like I said, it only takes a large seasonal event to sort of spread those things. We saw it with the fink and apple pine 30 years ago, so it's trying to change that mindset to make landholders become more proactive than reactive, I guess, is a big one. And just the fact that it's such a massive area, there are things that are potentially out there that we don't know about, which is why we want to train up other groups to sort of have eyes on the ground and assist us with that sort of thing. The Beetaloo Basin, there was a scientific inquiry into that. We had the 135 recommendations, 3 of those related to weed management. The industry's actually funded a full-time weed management officer, so he works closely with these guys in doing baseline weed assessments, developing weed management plans, that sort of thing. So we don't want to make the same mistakes they did in New South Wales and Queensland, where a lot of weed spread took place because of the fracking industry. So sort of very proactive on that front. Okay, so we've got 4 weed management regions. Ours is by far and away the biggest region, but we probably have the least weed issues. Not a lot of things like growing in this arid environment, so we're lucky in that respect. But as I mentioned, there's a lot of ground to cover, so things go under the radar. It's a bit hit and miss with the surveillance. These new plans are structured. We've got alerts, we've got priority weeds for eradication, we've got priority weeds for containment, priority pathways of spread, and priority landscape areas that we want to sort of keep intact. And together they're going to form the NT weed management strategy, which I think Darwin's the last cab off the rank. They're due to release their plan in the next 3-4 weeks. We've got some really good extension stuff that we've developed over the last few years. So you probably all know about NR Maps. It's like public accessible information on all weed data across the NT. A lot of mining companies, exploration companies tap into that, gives them a bit of baseline on what's out there and what to look for. We've also developed a weed mapping app, which is for mobile phones. It's a free app, which is really easy to use. Lots of drop downs. You can take a photo, attach it to your data and things like that. That's only happened in the last year or two. And weed ID texts, handbooks, all those sorts of things, and more specific things like preventing weed spread, hygiene and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, I think we've done a good job with our extension stuff over the last few years. And that's it, guys. Over to you.